Dragons. They've been in the cultural zeitgeist since prehistory. They predate writing, and drawings of them in one form or another can be found all over the world. What is it about dragons that are so captivating? Could it be some sort of biological memory of when we were still closer to the apes and being hunted by giant snakes and big cats and big birds? Or maybe it's our imagination run away with us after we discovered the first dinosaur bones. Or maybe it embodies the human imagination. Just something fantastical that could potentially have once been real. Now, long ago, Cressida Caldwell created a book series about Vikings and dragons. And eventually, her work found its way into the public eye more openly with the How to Train Your Dragon film series. And it was awesome. A bit bittersweet at the end, those of you who know the plots. But overall, a satisfying trilogy coupled with pretty decent shorts that usually surround the holidays, and TV shows that are still on streaming in various places that, for better and worse, continue the legacy of Cressida Caldwell's lovable characters. Now, they're back in a live-action How to Train Your Dragon movie. Hear me out, because while some of the original dialogue was removed, and this one scene involving Hiccup, Toothless, and a couple of terrible terrors was also removed, although I'm thinking it might end up in the bonus content of the DVD or Blu-ray, or maybe even an extended version when it comes out on streaming. This How to Train Your Dragon film was actually good. Let's start with the characters. Gerard Butler returns as Stoic the Vast, and while his voice is a little bit tired in places, I think it's a reflection of just how long Stoic has been battling dragons, and just how exhausted one person can be being a leader. Backing him up as Gobber, his faithful friend and maybe unrequited love interest. Well, Gobber's would be the one who was unrequited. Anyway, is Nick Frost. And while honestly Craig Ferguson did it better, I think that with a little more comedic material, Nick Frost would make a much appreciated Gobber. Although he wasn't terrible in this film. He was just gruffer. Less wisecracking, more closer to Stoic. But still not bad. We get a few other colorful characters. The dad of one of the Viking teens, who sort of plays it more stoic than actual stoic. He's practically a statue. But I think that's his character. He doesn't really emote, but overall, he gets his point across. And one Viking lady featured heavily is played by a young actress around 30, who is shown to have lost her leg to a dragon, but here's the fun part. The actress actually lost her leg in an accident, so kudos for having actual amputees show up playing Vikings who were injured by dragons. Because Gobber is the most well-known amputee character, second only to maybe Hiccup, those of you who have seen the films. But the actors who play them aren't actual amputees. So, like I said, kudos for getting an actual amputee to play one of the oddly limbed Vikings. Now we get to the teens. Before I do, I will say this. Yes, there are black and Oriental Asian characters dressed up as Vikings, but there's a good reason. Stoic explains, spoiler if you want to skip this part, but Stoic explains that dragons have besieged not only the Northlands, where the Vikings originally came from, but Asia and Africa. So that's why there are a few black and Asian Vikings among them. Burke is more of an outpost that's multi-generational, which is okay. It actually makes sense because Vikings traveled as far as the Middle East and maybe touched parts of Asia in their travels. So through trade networks, they might have come into contact with people who've also had to deal with dragons, and so they all were brought to this one spot to maybe find the original dragon nest and deal with it. So it makes sense in context. So don't completely dismiss this idea, because they did encounter various other peoples in the How to Train Your Dragon TV shows. So that makes sense. As for Hiccup's friends not looking exactly like they did in the show, the costumes are right, but the characterizations were a tiny bit flat. But then again, the original was a cartoon, so it's kind of hard to top a cartoon. Instead of going full Buster Keaton, or short of going full Buster Keaton. Astrid especially seemed to have a chip on her shoulder, with aspirations of becoming the next chief. Though the original Astrid didn't have those aspirations. She just wanted to be a good soldier. But I guess, I don't know if that counts as wokeness, but it kind of made her less likable at first. But then again, she was supposed to be slightly less likable because you're supposed to focus on Hiccup. But eventually she warmed up to the guy. So maybe she'll be a little less hostile in the next films. And yes, they're doing a sequel, thank goodness. They just better bring Cate Blanchett and Djimon Hounsou on the cast. But I'll get into that later. Anywho, as for Hiccup himself, the actor plays him less active than Jay Brucknell, but he does still have flavors of our Hiccup. And while he doesn't have that nasally voice that Brucknell has, he does seem like a more realistic version of the character. Even though the teens don't have the heavy accents that the adults do. They kept that from the cartoon. But overall, maybe if they find their characters a little more in the next film, that everyone's acting will improve just a little bit more. But this time, they didn't do a terrible job. There was room for improvement, but they did not get an F in my grading. Now we come to the main event, the dragons. The dragons themselves look slightly less cartoony than their original counterparts. They look more organic, and their measurements are a little more realistic. Like, some of the dragons look like caricatures in the cartoon, like the Zippleback and Gronkle. But in this film, they look more like they could be real animals. Like, the Terrible Terror looks like it might be an evolved form of chameleon, especially around the head. The Gronkle, I'd say it took inspiration from the Gila monster, and creatures like the Zippleback and Natter took more inspiration from, I'd say, iguanas, maybe turtles in terms of their faces, but not in a weird way. They still looked like the animals from the show, just a little more realistic. Also, they made the Red Death actually more red. Well, technically it's more red and black, so I'd say it was closer to Darth Maul, but in a good way. The Red Death felt like a true kaiju. Like, I wanted to scream, somebody call the Jaegers or the Power Rangers. This monster needs to be met with equal force. But, yeah. All the dragons were good, especially Toothless, who hasn't changed much in his design, thank goodness. You can still tell who and what he is. Also, the dragons seem to be a bit larger. Like, they're not super huge, except for the Red Death, of course. And it's still kind of hard to believe that something that size could fly. Although, if you believe the hollow bone and fire lung ideas that some theoretical dragon scientists put forth, then it might be plausible. But anyway, back to Toothless. He maintains his overall look, but he feels more like a biological creature, much like his other scaly brethren. And he and all the dragons have more weight and feel like they're really pushing through the air with their wings in order to get aloft. And overall, I would say the redesign of the various dragons is a plus column, especially the Monstrous Nightmare, which looks more monstrous and less cartoonish. It's sleeker. It's well, in the cartoon, its mouth was more spoon-shaped, and now it's more crocodilian, like something that a Catholic monk would look at and say, "Oh, that's the devil." So, kudos for that. Basically, the dragons look more dragonish, and I should probably move on to the rest of the review. Burke. It looks like Burke, but it feels like a place you could actually visit. Not just the shooting locations, but like the actual island somewhere exists in the north. And the various terrains are both believable and gorgeous to look at. Even when you're in the woods, it just feels like a fairy tale forest. I half expect one of the unicorns from Death of a Unicorn to show up and challenge Toothless to a duel. Yeah, so the various action sequences, the flying sequences, the slow moments where people are just talking, and the well, not the comedy, because that kind of falls flat in places, but overall the mood and aesthetics of this film are spot on. So yeah. Oh, and the music. They brought back the classic soundtrack, and it, combined with the imagery, it brought me almost to tears. Although they changed the final song for the cast credits, but it wasn't bad. They used music that felt Norse. Like, you would half expect some of the Vikings in the show to be chanting this song and banging their shields to bring on the berserker rage. So yeah, obviously nothing will replace the original How to Train Your Dragon, but this film, hopefully an extended version, comes very, very close. And thankfully, like I said before, they greenlit a sequel, which will probably follow the plot of the second film. And if they don't cast Cate Blanchett as Stoick's wife and Hiccup's mom, and Jaimon Hansu in the role of Drago Bludevist, as they were in the cartoon, then we need to all write strongly worded letters to DreamWorks, because there are no other actors who could possibly replace them. Oh, and assuming the third film gets made, please cast Arnold Vosloo as the villain from the third film, because he just seems like someone who could play such a character. So yeah, this is Mr. J signing out and reminding you, while dragons aren't real, the idea of dragons is effectively immortal. They're part of our culture. They're practically part of our soul. And when we look at Hiccup and the rest of the Viking teens, we can't help but feel a twinge of jealousy that they get to do what we only dream about. Although, if you're gonna ride a dragon for real, if possible, bring a barf bag, because I'm thinking the spinning might make some people nauseous. See you on Burke in 2027, hopefully.